love. Why? Because they haven't found it. And because they haven't found it, they imagine it. They make it into a myth and chase the myth instead. And that is not love. Meet Frank. Frank's not young. Meet Raina. Raina is young. They become lovers, but Frank winds up back at the fragile altar of his 30-year marriage to Paula. Who'd he pick? He didn't. Now what? Two Irish construction workers dig for the answer in the myth of Tristan and Isolde. Isolde. Do we make our own choices, or does fate do it for us? And in the meantime, all we have is the chase.
All I'm doing is just chasing bubbles.
Lie down now, brother. That's all there is. Chase on. Run yourself ragged.
That's where I'm stuck. I'm stuck in the chase, but I'm not getting closer to anything.
We're all chasing bubbles, but the narrator Joel begs to differ. From Triskelion Entertainment and the award-winning creator of the groundbreaking Liminal, the psychological Edward Hopper-inspired Hotel Lobby, and the worldwide festival pleaser A Cigar at the Beach, comes a new feature, Love is Not Love. Starring Alejandra Goyas, Louise Martin, Tanya Cornelisi, Russell Simpson, Cameron Taggy, and Stephen Keep Mills in this eternal conflict between the erotic and the domestic, between myth and morality, between you and the one you're still looking for.
Are you in line or out of line?
Chase on.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Glendale International Film Festival Q&As. We got a very special show. This is Love is Not Love. And I have with me the director and the lead actor. Please introduce yourselves.
I'm Stephen Keep Mills. I wrote, directed, and play a leading role in Love is Not Love. And now I want to pass it on to one of the lead actresses.
Hi, my name is Alejandra Goyas, and I play Reina Emilia in the movie Love is Not Love.
All right. So this is very basic question. We ask it, but, where did the genesis of this film start? Where did it start? Are you just a hopeless romantic?
Oh, you think it's a romance?
Well, it's not love, or is it? Are you just very cynical of the world?
Well, it's funny. I mean, it does follow the trajectory of mythology. I mean, if you look at Tristan and Isolde, I mean, it's a great story, but it doesn't have a great ending. I mean, it has a very sad ending. And I think that's the sort of progress of this story. It's a quest of the heart to find its companion, and hopefully to listen to fate, which gives little clues along the way. But what happens if you miss every one of them? What if you fall into the trap of mythology, of fantasy, and you are unable to see the life force which is right in front of you? So it's really a cautionary tale about pay attention to the relationship that you're in, to the relationship that you're looking for, and to put it through sort of a validity test, which would immediately rule out the pursuit of fantasy. Does that make any sense?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. So this story is actually set in New York City. Did you actually film in New York City? And what was why New York City?
Well, I love New York for one thing, but I wanted the issue to be multicultural. I wanted everybody to be seen as having the same problem. And that's what the first 6 minutes is about. I mean, we see different nationalities all kind of complaining about domestic distress, being unhappy in their relationships. And New York has kind of a jagged, kaleidoscopic swirl to it, which I felt fit the rough road that the pursuit of love travels on. So that was, plus it's beautiful. Now, let me answer the question. It was a big problem, how we're going to shoot those scenes, because a third of the film takes place in New York. We're all based in Los Angeles, and there was no way you could fly the cast to New York or somehow find everybody's twin and cast them in New York. There was just no way to do it. And I remembered watching films where people are in a car and the countryside is kind of whizzing past them, rear screen projection. And I looked it up, and it's like, if you can't afford to take the actors to the location, bring the location to the actors. So the cinematographer and I, Stephen Fadelen, went to New York, just the two of us, for 5 days, and got a bunch of footage. We also mapped out the scenes in New York, picking a different location for each character or pair of characters. We estimated how fast they would be walking, what the distance would be between the camera and the actor. We could have calculated all this, came back to LA, put up a big, huge, like 20 by 14 screen, rear projected it, and we had 3 treadmills that the sound guy said would never work. They'd be much too loud. They weren't. They were office treadmills, like if you're working next to somebody in an office and you want to exercise while you're sitting down, you have a treadmill underneath you. So it's very quiet. And we basically faked it. And I think I think the illusion works. I think the imagination accepts it. And New York does its part. I mean, there's nothing more interesting going on than any shot you want to take of New York. So we found a way of bringing it into the brewery, which is a downtown series of artist studios. I had leased one, took it over from my son, who was a painter. I knew he wasn't going to get his deposit back unless I took it. So I bailed him out and got a great sound studio at the same time.
Great. So Alejandra, tell us, how were you approached to be in this film, and did you see it as a romance film despite the title, or did you see this as another kind of film?
Well, I've known Stephen for over 10 years now. We worked together for the first time in a short that he did. It was called Liminal. It was a very different role and very different script, but we met there and we became very good friends, and we remained friends. And then he brought the script to me and showed me the script, and I was like, wow, like I was just, impressed the first time that I saw it, just because of the kind of character that I play. I play an escort who falls in love with this older man. And I've never played something like that. It was a very different role than what I normally play. I play more like character roles and psychologically impaired and weird and the friend, and that's what I play normally. And this was, the love interest. And when he showed me this, I was, very excited. I thought it was a very sad tale. I think it's not a romance film necessarily. I think it's about trying to find the way to feel loved. And unfortunately, neither of the characters find it. I think at the end, for me, it's a very sad tale. Nobody really is complete or feels fulfilled by the end. So I remember getting angry at Steve several times and being like, that's totally wrong, like what your character's doing. And what he does to my character and how he deals with things. And it is, I think it's very common in human beings to kind of not really see what's in front of you. And he has, as Steve said, his character has several opportunities to take things, go different ways, and he doesn't really take any.
Yeah, so Stephen, you not only directed this film and wrote this film, you're also in this film. Did you write this role for yourself in mind, or did you ever consider somebody else? And why did you end up playing a role, act in this movie as well as work behind the scenes?
To save money and to save time. I knew I was to try to explain some of those scenes and the sort of mental carriage of Frank. I probably would have failed. I probably couldn't have explained it. So I just had to keep the knowledge to myself and use it in the best way I could. I did actually have another actor for the part. I don't know if you remember him, a black actor, Ron Glass from Barney Miller, a popular TV show in the 80s. But the script was never right at the time that he was available. And of course, this could just be an excuse. I waited him out, but he passed away. And I thought, if I'm an ensemble person, my background is theater, and I appreciate an ensemble more than I do a star. And I thought, if there's not going to be a star that I can get, one of the top 10, because that's the first question people ask, who's in it? And if it's not a name that makes the cash register go off, then I might as well just play the part myself. I know what it is, and I'll save myself some hassle. Although I don't recommend it. I think it's bad for the other actors because they don't get the attention that they need, that they require. I mean,
we got it before. I have to interrupt you because we did. We rehearsed this movie, not like you normally, in films, you shoot the same day, you're rehearsing. I mean, it's like very little preparation. And we did. We rehearsed it almost like a play. We knew what we were doing. We worked on the script. I mean, we had the luxury of, really spending time with Stephen. So when we got to the set, we were pretty much very clear about what we needed to do.
The actors knew what to do. I didn't have to be two people at the same time. I just basically gave it over to the cinematographer who had been in on all the rehearsals. Yeah. So that he was like a third party to everything. And that seemed to it seemed to work. It almost had an energy of its own. I know people were looking around saying, hey, where's the director? He's over there playing a scene. But who's directing this thing? It's like Ali said, it had sort of been pre-directed before we shot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What's a easier job? What's a harder job, like being behind this camera or in front of the camera?
They're both great. They really are. I think for me, acting is harder because it's so specific. And if you don't get it right, you criticize yourself, you knock yourself out. You want to do it over and over again until you get it right. With the director,
do you think it was harder that you directed yourself and that you didn't have a director?
That's the way I like it. No, I hoped for the best. I mean, I was in on the rehearsals too, and I saw some of the playback. And if something didn't just totally offend me, I mean, I have you look to see if the scene works, not how good you are, but does the thing work? And if it does, that's fine. It can come out in any number of ways. It doesn't have to come out how you might have wanted it to. It just has to come out in a way that works.
What would you say was the biggest challenge of the entire film? And this could be both, both of you can answer. What was the personal biggest challenge?
Ali, you go first.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay, well, definitely by far the sexual part of my character. She's an escort, so she has this, she is a sexual being.
Yeah.
And as I said in the beginning, like that was like super daunting. I was like, whoa, how am I supposed to play this? And I didn't want to go into the stereotypes because it's not written that way. She's I think what the movie shows is how real of a person she is and how she is in pursuit of her own happiness and someone to accept her the way she is. So even though she has this kind of flow of being, very secure and just knowing what she's doing and how she's doing it and luring men in and, giving them pleasure, in reality, she's an extremely needy person who is also looking for someone to love her and to, feel protected. And so I had the sexual part in my, background, but I tried to play her as real as I could. And I asked myself this all the time, like, how do women who do this for a living, how do you separate, this constantly? How can you, combine the sexual part with, it's almost like an act. How do you not fall into, getting involved with the person who's your client? I don't know, complicated.
Yeah. Were you uncomfortable throughout any of it? Was that hard?
I mean, there was really, as I said, Steve and this was actually easier than the short I did with Steve before. Liminal, I was naked through the entire short. Tanya Carnalisi, who plays the narrator in this movie, was, it was the two of us, and we were naked through the whole short. And that was much harder. That was much more vulnerable for me than here. I mean, here it's really, I mean, I'm definitely super comfortable with Steve, so there was no uncomfortableness in terms of that. It was just, what's really complicated here is their relationship and what's happening. So I think I was able to work through the sexual part, but it was, because it was focused more on their relationship and what was happening with them as human beings.
How about you, Steve? What was the biggest challenge? Was it juggling the three sort of things, directing, writing, acting at once, or was it something else?
It was keeping up with the changes. So many changes happen in the course of this particular adventure that the script kept changing. I had no idea how it was going to end. So it was like being in a permanent state of I don't know, which is a creative state if you don't let it get you down. You can say, okay, I don't know now, but I will use this mystery and confusion to find a path through here some way. But it kept, I mean, the things that seem to obstruct you are also the things that are the wind underneath your wings as well. And I think being able to change, instead of being rigid and saying, no, it has to be this way. The changes really, I think, made the film flow better. I think it made the performances more agreeable, more loose. And I think the story kept its character as a kind of wisp of smoke, which just keeps changing and reforming, and you find a face in the smoke, and then it disappears, and you see an ocean liner. Or it kept the imagination interested. So that was, I think, the greatest challenge and the greatest, delight of the experience.
We talked a little bit about the filming locations earlier. Let's talk about the black and white. Like, what was the? I'm always curious about why filmmakers choose black and white when they shoot black and white. Was it to create a mood? Was it nodding a particular movie? Was it, budget reasons? I mean, what was the decision to shoot in black and white?
One day, we had this mood board. You know what a mood board is? It's like you have a, cork board with little pictures of people and places, all the things you're going to make the movie out of or give yourself a thought about. And Stephen Fadelen, the cinematographer, brought in a photograph, put it down in front and said, "What do you think of that?" And it's a black and white photograph of a guy walking down the road, long shot, and all you could focus on was the guy. I mean, there was woods and shrubs and whatever. And if they had all been in color, you wouldn't even have seen the guy. It would have been like, "Where's Waldo?" But because it was black and white, your eye went to where it was supposed to. The guy, and even though his back was to the camera, you started to even think, well, gee, he looks tired, or maybe he's running away, or you start to make up a story. It's very provocative, black and white. It's more provocative than color because it takes you right into the emotion of the scene, even if you're the one making it up. Black and white encourages you to do that. I favor it. I think it is the color of storytelling, period.
Yeah, I love a good black and white film. The question is, did anyone worry that, it meant, it won't be as popular, won't be as moneymaker if it was not in black and white? Or did you just, not care and you did what your heart told you or something like that?
Well, I think it's, I wasn't expecting a great financial return on this. And I don't know that color would have made any difference. But I think basically it was how we wanted it to look. What was the visual signature we wanted to sign it with? And I think black and white was the answer. I mean, it wasn't, all the films I grew up on were black and white. I mean, subtitles. And I think as I said, I think that is the narrative color.
Yeah. How long did it take you to shoot this film?
We broke it up into 3 different sections. First section were the scenes with Alejandra, and that took a little over a week. Then because, I don't have a huge staff or carpenters and stuff like that, we had to lay in a lot of time before the next clump of shots, which were with Paula, my wife, in the story. And we searched for locations. Again, we had rehearsal time. Who's going to do the props? I mean, we had, all these little details that it takes a couple of months to answer. So then we shot those scenes in that location. And then we did the New York scenes last. And we had to do them last because we had no idea how we were going to do them at the beginning. The rear screen was not an original thought. It was original, but it didn't start at the beginning of the shooting. It came in a flash, and we didn't know if it was going to work. We had no idea. It could have been a total flop. Then we would have had to try something else. But that was the fun of it too, was making something work that we had no idea if it would or not. So all of this, to answer your question, it was like 33 days spread over a year and 3 months.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, was that yeah.
No, I was just saying that when there's a scene where Alejandra appears with her family early on, or where Frank and Alejandra first see each other. That was like over a year after we had already completed shooting the bulk of her scenes with Frank.
Yeah.
So,
and then we did ADR, right? So it really took,
But that's the process, you know. And I'm glad that I had the time because, you know, if it was 33 days in a row, I don't think it would have been as good. I think the time in between, you start to rethink things, you reevaluate, you come up with ideas that you have time to come up with. If you didn't have that time, you wouldn't have been able to. So the imagination likes to take a little walk through the park now and then to kind of restore itself.
Yeah. Out of curiosity, what is your like favorite part of the filmmaking process? Is it the pre-production? Is it the production, the post-production? You know, is it just the aftermath, seeing your film in front of an audience? Like, what gives you the most pleasure as a filmmaker?
You know, I started as an actor. I graduated as an actor, and I go back to that. I mean, the acting to me is the reward. I like that process. I like working with actors, seeing how a scene evolves. I mean, it never ends the way you thought it would when you first conceived it. So acting always surprises me, and I'm really glad that I was able to participate as an actor because the other actors are so good. I wanted to be able to be as good. So it was a good mutual challenge among us to make this thing come out.
Do you have anything you want to add to that, Alejandra?
Well, I definitely enjoyed, I don't know, I think I enjoy all the parts. I mean, definitely working one-on-one with Steve and trying to figure out who the characters are. Really, the time that we had to rehearse is a luxury in film. You normally do not have that time. Then what Steve said, we actually, you know, rehearsed it like it was almost like a play, but the director of photography was with us during the rehearsals, and he will actually, you know, he was actually shooting us and getting footage, and you know, where would he be? Reina and Frank's scenes are very, very intimate, so he was always on top of us, which I loved. That's why I love film so much. It's
When you say on top of you, like literally,
like
or
literally, he was super close to us, and you know, a lot of our scenes are in bed. You know, they're just very intimate, and so I love that kind of, you know, working with in film. That's what it is. You know, the camera can just kind of reflect what you're showing, and there's no need to. You just have to be there and in the moment, and then magic happens when the camera's there. And it was. I mean, I think I was very comfortable with Steve, so that process of filming was great. And then when we saw the movie for the first time, it was well, we saw it with the crew, but the first time with an audience was at Cinequest, and I don't know, the reaction was amazing. I felt, you know, you never know really. Are they going to laugh where they should? Are they going to understand what's happening? Are they going to be in tune with the story? You know, so they were. That screening was great. Remember, Steve, all the questions, and everyone felt super identified with all the characters. And unfortunately, you know, we've all had to all the festivals are now online, which is great. But at the same time, it's so hard because that part, there's nothing like going into a movie theater with the audience and, you know, having them laugh where you're like, yes, you know, they got it and they understand like that. that part is so hard right now that we're not having that. There's no really way to know what's going on.
Yeah, and this film would have been a good one to see on the big screen too, mostly because of the black and white cinematography and all that. Like, what do you miss most about like the theater going experience?
Honestly, I miss going out with my husband and not having to have my kids 24/7 with me. That was our date night. We used to go out every Wednesday and Friday to the movie theater, and we love film. So yes, I mean, it's such a communal kind of experience. And when you're with other people and things click and then you hear other people, I do enjoy that very much. I have friends who are like, oh, I'd rather, see it at my house. I don't want anyone breathing next to me or laughing at things or making noise. And I'm like, I love that. I mean, not that they're making noise, but like, it's kind of this communal experience where you go and you are with people, and then you kind of saw the same thing and you come out and everyone is like kind of talking about it, even if you don't know. I don't know. It's just a very enriching experience for me. And obviously going with someone else, I mean, I would go with my husband and we would spend hours talking about what we saw. So I really miss that. I think film is definitely to be seen on the big screen. And I hope we're back very soon.
And Stephen, you, I'm sure you made this with showing with the intention of showing it on the biggest screen possible. But do you think it can still work just as well with people watching it? Hopefully with a very big widescreen TV at home.
It does. I mean, it's I guess it's a priority of preference. It does work on any screen. But I think the wonder, I mean, as Alejandro was saying, of film going is to be in the presence of that scope, that tremendous size, which somehow just absolutely embraces the imagination. And you see things you never saw before, and you're able to experience the film rather than think about the film. I think the smaller the screen, the more thought process comes in, whereas when the screen is really huge, you don't think about it. You just take the ride. And that's, I think, the best way to see a film is to experience it. And I think it's easier the larger the screen, but still, I'll take whatever there is.
And the music is absorbing too. I mean, it has an amazing sound track, and I think it's that brings you into it, And if you're watching it in the big screen, obviously it's even better. But
yeah, do you want to add anything about the soundtrack and what that process was like, Stephen?
Yes, the composer is just great. Kenny Landrum is his name, and he worked on Twin Peaks. I mean,
I have like a Twin Peaks shirt, I think, in the Dirty Clothes. So we could talk about Twin Peaks all day long. But.
Well, I'm sure he could too. He lives in upstate New York, and that's where I met him because I used to live up there, and we had worked together before, and he just impressed me prior to how much how much he knows about music. I mean, he knows everything. And then to actually go to his basement and work out some of this stuff with him was insane, because he's a very intuitive, forceful guy. And some of the stuff just comes out of his head onto the keys. So, that's an intense state. I mean, that's like an actor who is in the midst of, a high emotion. And you have to be very careful how you approach somebody who's in this mood. I mean, great music's coming out, but it's not like you just cut it off and talk about something else. So it was amazing to watch him create, to be in the midst of someone who was just drawing it up out of the deep well of tunes and music and theory that he carries with him every day. And we had some bouts. I mean, I wasn't quite sure of how something worked, and I would say I wanted, to be louder, and he said, "That's not my job. That's the sound mixer's job." I just put it there, and he said at one point, "I'm going to give you your money back. I'm out of here." And I said, "Why?" And he, told me how he liked to work and how I was kind of sitting on his shoulder. And I do that. I do it with the editor as well. I mean, I'm there like a hawk, a respectful hawk. But I do want to see how it comes out, what they're doing,
I didn't
but
know
anyway,
that. I don't think you're a hawk as a director at all. I think you
well,
let us fly.
but I'm in the same sort of situation as you are as an actor with Kenny. I'm not a musician, so I don't know exactly what he's going to be going through. I found out, but I think it was a pleasure to. I said, "How did you come up with that? How did you come up with that so fast?" It's pretty amazing, the creative process, whether it's in a musician or an acting partner. And I'm totally amazed at Alejandra's work. And I learn every time I look at the film, which is, not infrequent. I see things that I never would have come up with to ask an actor to do, that they just intuitively bring with them. So it's amazing process. I mean, you say, what's the best part? All of it really sort of has its gems, and pitfalls too. But if you can finish a film, you're in good shape.
We've talked quite a bit about the love scenes. I'm curious, talk a little bit about those two construction guys that we see in the trailer and stuff. Like, those characters were interesting because it almost felt like they were in a totally different movie. So tell me about that.
Well,
Working with them.
they were designed initially as kind of a chorus, a Greek chorus, except they turned out to be an Irish chorus. They sort of, I mean, as you look at the film, initially you get the sort of population, the pedestrians talking about, as I said, their domestic distress. So we get the sort of cultural aura. And then these two guys come in and they sort of set the theme of the whole thing. One guy caught between two women. I mean, the sort of domestic and erotic divide, and who does he pick? He doesn't. And fate, how much does fate play in on this? Do we really make our choices? Or are we just following some script that we can't know about? So they kind of, in a comic, they're the comic relief, like in a Shakespeare play. I mean, you get the clowns who come out and sort of demonstrate what the main theme and the main character is going to be going through. So when they talk of Tristan and Isolde, I mean, Frank is sort of a modern Tristan in the sense that, as I think modern man is, having to define his masculinity through either eroticism or domestic. And it's really neither, which is why he's by himself at the end, because it's still unresolved. But back to the construction guys. They had to carry the theme, and they had to be great. And I had some of the actors who had finished their scene saying, "Look, and this is before we had done the construction guys, and they said, they better be good, because otherwise our work isn't going to be, recognized." And I knew they were there. So casting them was a pleasure. Rehearsing them with them was a pleasure. They were really funny and they got along very well, which meant that beyond the script, they were able to create a bond between them, which you couldn't write, that I think, elevated what could have been pretty sloggy dialogue, but I think they lived it, they kept it alive, and they brought us along. So they're the thematic duo. But also, I mean, they are men alone. They're on the way to work or away from work or whatever, but they don't have women in their lives. If they do, it's not satisfying. At the end, fate does surprise them, and they end up having a sort of Gaelic connection at Mohammed's food cart in the middle of the city. So, I mean, that to me is also how fate happens. It can drive you alone on the path, like Frank ends up, or it can connect you in a way that you get blindsided by in a beautiful way.
What do you hope audiences get the most out of? What do you hope the audiences take away most from Love Is Not Love?
Okay, I'm gonna pick your brain, Alejandra, on that question, and then I'll pick mine.
I think I would expect them to understand that I think the concept of love is not an easy one to understand. I've been married for 20 years now, and it is definitely a work on every day kind of a job. It's a keeping alive certain things and paying attention to them. And I think that this idea, which the movie kind of shows, of men trying to, either focus on the erotic or the domestic, is not what a marriage is about. I think it can be successful if you learn how to integrate both of them. It takes work, and it takes patience, and a lot of communication. So I guess what I would like people to take away from the movie would be this kind of understanding of what relationships are. I remember very early on, when I was much younger, a friend of mine who was very idealistic was telling me, that he really loved this woman. And he said, but we fight very often. And, I don't understand how this is the way, like, is this how love is? Are these relationships? Are we supposed to have? He was much younger than I was. And I said, I mean, yeah, though, yes, it is love. Yes, you do negotiate. Yes, you do fight. That, yeah, there's all this, and this idealistic idea of love and how it should be is really not what a relationship is about. We always joke, Steve and I, when people say, oh no, my life is perfect. Like, I have no issues. Like, we always get along. And it's like, that's not true. I think there's going to be issues, and there are going to be problems, and it's the way of solving them which makes the relationship progress and go to the next step. I think one of the issues with Paula and Frank is that they never really communicate. There's a huge gap. And I think the same happens with Reina and him. Maybe he's the one who doesn't know how to communicate, Steve. I just thought about that. Why does he, he has these two women in his life, and neither of them, I think, are able to say what they're really feeling. My character in particular, when Reina does kind of say what she's going through or tries to connect with him in a different way, gets shut off, and there's no way to cross that. And she has her pride, and she just decides to say, okay, this is it, and we're done. So I don't know. It's kind of seeing relationships. I think I've always said that anyone who is falling in love for the first time, who has been married for a long time, who is starting a marriage should see this movie. I think it does talk about the complexity of relationships, and it doesn't give you a straight answer. It, opens up a lot of questions, but I think it's good. I think it's good to have questions in a relationship.
You notice how easy it was for the woman to blame the man. So it's me who isn't the one listening. Listen, I'll tell you something. When Raina springs it on him by saying, "I wish we could go to a movie or a museum." I mean, it's like here's a 50-pound ball that I want you to carry right now. It's too much of a surprise. There's no elision. You sort of your character throws a fantasy at my character without any transition or introduction into that fantasy. So that's one thing.
She already transitioned in her mind. She already went through that thought process in her mind.
But that's the problem. It's always in your mind. It has to be out on the table. It has to be in front of both of us. In a scene with Paula, I call it the ambient scene. It takes place late at night, and he talks a lot in that scene, but none of it lands. At the end of it, Paula looks at him like, "What? You're talking about Clint Eastwood wearing a hat down low over his eyes and his hand close to his gun. What are you talking about?" And really what Frank is talking about is his fear of a deficient masculinity that he's not able to protect, that he's not able to survive, that he's not able to be the man he wants to be in his mind, which I guess if we're talking about fantasy, we whittle it down to each person's fantasy of themselves. But I think it's not because Frank doesn't listen or he doesn't. We live in a vacuum. I mean, not everybody all the time, but these are two good examples of a vacuum, both with Raina and with Paula and Frank himself, that prevent the relationship from growing. It's almost like a cold wind comes in and destroys any fertility there may have been. But that was just, getting back at you, Raina.
Exactly. I could see you were trying to do that, but you won't.
But what I want people to take away from it is that it was a beautiful movie, that it was very well acted, that it was quick, dynamically pleasing, but also that they take a look at themselves in terms of their relationships and are able to have a more animated, to break the silence, really. That's what I wanted to do, to break the silence in relationships.
Well, hey, I love movies where people can take away completely different things from one another. That's all I'll say. And so one final question for the night. How are you guys doing in these interesting sort of pandemic we're in? And are you guys keeping busy? Are you managing to find new projects to be attached to? What are you up to?
Ali?
Difficult question. I have 2 young kids. I do voiceover, a lot of voiceover. I've been fortunate enough in the pandemic to be able to continue with my job as a voiceover actor because I have a home studio, so I record. I've been very busy during this political season, so that has been good. So I am very, very busy. Plus, I'm homeschooling 2 kids, and pretty crazy time for me, for mothers and just families in general who have young kids. So I've been focusing on that. I have a writing project that has been kind of stopped for now, but at least I have my creative fix with the voiceover. So that has been, yeah, my focus right now.
I've been working on walking because since January I've had 2 full hip replacements. So I am now bionic and titanium-esque. But it's, I mean, what better thing to do at a time like this than to get your hips right? There's one project I have left on this film, which is to celebrate the costume designer, Michael Philpott, who at the brewery lived 3 doors down. I mean, it couldn't have been more of a kismet situation if you had written it. Very great guy, beautiful costumes, and I have 27 mannequins all in a box right now that are going to be assembled and dressed, and we're going to make sort of a curtain raiser for the film. How what he saw became the sort of flexibility of the characters themselves. And he's just a genius, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm working on that, and I have to get that done first. You know, first things first. We've had 42 festivals and 26 awards across a lot of categories. So I think the film has been, if anybody's watched it, I mean, there is an art house audience out there, and that's our audience. And I think it's done okay. We're going to be visiting distributors to see if we can get some of the ultra low budget money back. But, you know, it's just part of the process. I mean, it's the festivals sort of prove us a track record, and hopefully we can attract a distributor. But that's not going to stop me. If we don't, we do something else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, both of you actually happen to be nominated in the GIFF award, so you know, hope.
Fantastic.
And thank both of you. I want to thank both you, Stephen and Alejandra, for coming here. For those in the audience, the film is, you know, we were talking about is Love Is Not Love. You can find it at GlendaleIFF.com. That is GlendaleIFF.com. And tomorrow, and the next Q&A, we will be talking about documentary shorts, which will be early in the morning at 9 a.m. But until then, that will be a wrap for tonight. So thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
And for everyone, this is sort of my new tagline. GIFF out, everybody.
Thanks so much, Justin.
Thank you so much for inviting us. Yes.